All right. So, welcome to the Big Ideas in App Architecture podcast. Ari, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
It's been good. I've been just busy with some work. I know we had to reschedule a few times, but I'm glad that we kind of finally made it.
Yes, likewise. Yeah, same here. Oh, it's very busy with work and other things for sure.
Brilliant. The last time I spoke, I think the last thread we left it was lacrosse. I think we were talking about your kids playing it and you coaching and getting involved. How is that going?
Good. Yeah, I mean it's off season now for both the college guys that I coach and my son, but my son also does cross country, so he's doing that right now. But he's been practicing for his fall tournaments for his club team, Massachusetts. So yeah, everything's been going well. He's been doing well. He's been growing into his body, getting bigger. So weightlifting and all that kind of stuff.
You told me last time we spoke, like go check out some videos and stuff. It's pretty interesting sport. I didn't I mean every sport is pretty unique, and obviously there is some respect that lacrosse has gained in my mind. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I enjoy it. I'm glad you got to take a look.
Well, so for people listening in, I'm really excited to have Ari on. It's not like every day that you get to talk to somebody who's working at a company whose product you kind of touch on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, so everyone who's in the tech space, who is involved with some level of coding or doing some sort of version control on the code they're building, use GitHub. This is a company that started off in 2008, and it evolved from Git, which was developed by Linus, who's also the guy behind Linux. And it's very fascinating how this company was formed and then got acquired by Microsoft for $7.5 billion a long time ago, but has been very influential over the last 10, 15 years to code developers. And it's also changing, right? So when I was thinking about you, Ari, and I was thinking what we should talk about, I was like, it's so awesome that I get to talk to somebody who works at this company and get to know their journey and what they do at a day-to-day basis. So I'm really excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to really talk about all things GitHub. I enjoy working at GitHub and working with our customers for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I don't want to butcher your interview here and your introduction. So let's start with, why don't you let the people hear a little bit about yourself and let them know what your role at GitHub is. Tell us a little bit about your background, some of your strengths.
Sure. So my name is Ari LiVigni. I'm a senior cloud solutions architect with GitHub. I'm based remotely in Worcester, Massachusetts. I've been with GitHub for about 2 years. I've worked at other great companies too, AWS, Red Hat, and VMware, all great companies. And obviously Red Hat being an open source company really feeds well into GitHub as well. I'm very passionate. I would say the thing what I'm passionate about and what I get to do on a day in, day out basis is really increase and improve productivity for our customers by using our product and showing them like the best ways, best practices to use it. It really kind of keeps me passionate about it every single day. When I wake up, I'm like, oh, here's another problem to solve. And how can we solve it with GitHub or Azure for that matter? A lot of times with a lot of customers that are using Azure on the back end and want to learn how the different services work. So we also have to be informed and know about them as well.
Amazing. So for people listening who may know a little bit about GitHub, tell us a few things that nobody knows about GitHub, like the way everything is set up and the way you kind of operate as a company.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really, I have to say, very brilliant engineering team across for all our different products. I mean, I think a lot of people think of GitHub as like, oh, I put my source code up there and I check it out. We invented the pull request, we invented forking, all of these things that are built in now are issues and discussions that really create like a great ecosystem for software development from not only engineers, but I would say also for project managers or for people looking at a high level out of what are my engineers or what is my developer community, what are they doing? And I would say too, we try to emphasize on using GitHub in an open source or an inner source way. We use the term inner source because it's not really open to the public, but maybe you're inner source and you're keeping open source within your own company and everyone wants to have a view of that. I would say the other key thing that I'm very excited about because I get to work with it and the new features and things that come out about it is GitHub Copilot. And I think a lot of people don't understand, we're not just this platform. We have a lot of security built into analyzing code and looking at it, as well as automatically fixing. I can go on and on about GitHub Copilot.
No, this is cool because I did want to get to talk to you about Copilot. I'm right now really actively testing Copilot. I'm also using Cursor. I'm also testing OpenAI's new built-in code editor, right? Like so, but the fundamental idea is that GitHub Copilot was one of the first ones to do it and present it, right? So I'm really fascinated by the AI part of GitHub now and what it's enabling. We can get into that as well. But let's just go back to what you were kind of talking about, your role, right? Like at GitHub, many times we are like thinking, oh, this is part of my software development lifecycle. I'm coding, I'm checking out, I'm checking in, I'm committing my code. I will go and put an issue. I'll pull some things. I'll push things. These are things that on a day-to-day basis a developer is using. But you brought in the idea that there's so much going on behind that. You have a cloud infrastructure. You have to protect all of this data. You have to secure everything. So as a cloud infrastructure person, how are you involved and how has the company kind of shaped everything to kind of support that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they've done is they've created this ecosystem of that they have. As a developer, you have all these tools at your fingertips, whether it's GitHub Advanced Security to kind of dive into more of the security part of your code, making sure, we use CodeQL to analyze and automatic or Dependabot is another feature we have that looks for end of dependencies or any vulnerabilities and reports those. And now we're getting to this point too, where like Copilot and the AI is there not only to identify these issues, but also to automatically fix it. We have a kind of a motto or a phrase that came about now with Copilot integrating with our security product is this found means fixed. So if a problem is found, it's automatically fixed without having to then, a developer has to go back and then look at the vulnerability. And I think that's what it is too, is really getting the most out of our developer community without having to put more of a burden on them. They don't really want to have to always think about all the security things that go into their code. They don't always have to think about like even generating code. And that's where Copilot comes in for a lot of that and automatically analyzing and fixing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool because I have some projects sitting in my GitHub repository whose packages I have not updated. And I get these vulnerability alerts, saying, update this, So I see, like, so you're basically talking about how Copilot can basically handle this vulnerability and tell me that it's fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. And even from the normal, like what we call flow state or normal developer flow, as I'm guilty of this as much as anyone else, of putting a pull request together and not putting a lot of details in my pull request summary and not really giving my peers that info. I think we're all guilty. In fact, I think there was an analysis done in our last universe in 2023 that only 40% of people actually fill in the pull request summary. So it tells you, and now GitHub Copilot, you can actually click a summary of what you've changed in that code. It will look through and tell you, it will outline the files that were touched. And there's another time-saving thing that we all dread, like, what am I going to put in this summary? I'm too close to the code. Am I going to miss something that my peer needs to know to really review this thoroughly? So that's been a huge productivity boost. I know for myself and I know for customers that we work with on a day in, day out basis.
Amazing. Oh, that's really awesome. So let's dive into GitHub itself and the way it's available to us, right? Like we go to github.com and every person can create an account and that's their private account. It's sort of like publicly available if you keep public repositories. But then we also have the opportunity to create organizations, and that's where you work with customers, right? Like the customer org, and you have their projects and things like that. All of this running on-prem, all of this running on the cloud? How is it?
Sure. Yeah. So we even have this concept of enterprise. So there's an enterprise customer, and then they will have maybe multiple organizations as part of their enterprise as well. And it can run on github.com, and we're maintaining that infrastructure. So obviously very cloud oriented off-prem, but then we have our GitHub server product, which they can just run in-house. We're getting this data residency where we'll have multiple cloud locations if people still want to use cloud, but they need it in their region. So we're doing a lot of things to expand our footprint there and still offer on-prem solution, a hybrid solution, or a completely cloud solution where we're maintaining all of that infrastructure for folks on GitHub.com.
Right. And that addresses a very important question, right? Like for every enterprise, as much as keeping transactional data is important, keeping the code of those applications is equally important because there are developers working on it. They have to make sure things keep moving, keep working exactly how they want. They have so it's very critical for this data, this application data, these code repositories to be available. So resiliency is important. So how do you do all of that resiliency and high availability on GitHub as well? Is it like a multi-region setup with like bunch of load balancers? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, now we have the main, really, it's located here in the US, but the idea is with this data residency that we'll have presences and just how AWS or Microsoft does for Azure, where we'll have these multiple sites where they can use those as a local cluster to use and get access to use GitHub.com there, get better throughput. And also in certain countries, they can't have that data be somewhere else in another country, another location. So this data residency will help them, fix that problem for them.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited for that because I think going forward in the future, everybody kind of wants data residency. There are requirements around GDPR and DORA and CCPA. All of them are like adding to the complexity of how enterprises want to interact with any kind of data that they are kind of putting on the cloud, right? It's very interesting. So let's dive a little bit into your own background. You've been working in the space for a while. What made you passionate about cloud infrastructure? And I know you actively also worked on DevOps and Kubernetes and stuff. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say, really the digital transformation and the consumption-based model of that kind of shift from what, I hate to date myself. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I'm one of the old guys, but, of being this, on-prem maintaining servers and connecting them for people to use, doing capital budgets, and really shifting to this model of more of an OpEx of, okay, only pay for what you're using, and you can ramp up projects much faster that way than having to plan 6 months to a year out of what resources you may possibly need that may sit idle or you may not have enough of. And I think that's what really made me passionate of getting into the cloud space. It was kind of the perfect, the nirvana kind of computing, where you had to worry less about infrastructure and really concentrate on the core development of your applications, your services, and your software for your end customers. And really, that's transformation, that digital transformation, I think was so, really made me excited about the field and getting deeper into that. And for DevOps especially, it really solves a lot of those problems.
Nice. That's awesome. So, did you start off working on any particular cloud at first? I know now you're working on Azure because of just the way it is. But did you start on at AWS and what was it like?
Yeah, I started really working with AWS a lot. I had a lot of interaction from Red Hat because we used a lot of AWS on the back end of OpenShift, our Kubernetes offering that's there and still growing and doing great. It's a great product. I love it. But that's how I got kind of introduced into AWS and really using it on the back end. So that's my first cloud. I would say probably the one I know the least at this point is probably Google. I don't really use Google too much, but Azure and AWS, I feel very comfortable in all the services that are offered in both of those.
Right. And so I'm going to ask you for an opinion, and you can give me a politically correct answer if you want to. But which one do you prefer personally?
Yeah. I would say both AWS and Azure are very comparable in the services they offer. I think Azure has some better solutions there when it comes to FedRAMP or governance, or more stuff when it comes to the PubSec space of that I think maybe isn't I didn't find a lot of that easy to use on the AWS side. So I'll give a little bit extra points there for Microsoft Azure. But that's that's what I would say.
Yeah, safe answer. I'll take it.
Got to stay safe.
I know. It's very interesting, Ari. Like when I was also researching you, I went to check out some of your previous work that you've done, and you're a big passionate person in CI/CD and Jenkins. And is that what led you to also get to GitHub? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say, right. I used to I worked at a startup way back when, and I got exposed to Jenkins, which was at that point was Hudson, which is what, Kosuke created this. And we worked at Sun Microsystems. So I know the whole history. I love the history of software and where we've been and where we are now. And first we're managing this right on bare metal machines. Then it's VMs. Then we actually got to containers of using it containerized or container orchestration. And I think what I loved was really like that was like the old way of thinking about it. And we needed to really come up with a way where it was more cloud native, more oriented. That's kind of where I got into the Tecton space of here's something that's pipelines and CI/CD are first class citizens built into Kubernetes. Tecton is the open source. OpenShift actually has their own version called OpenShift Pipelines, which is built on Tecton. And I think that's what really kind of was like, wow, we're really getting to the point where now as developers, testers, anyone that's using CI/CD in any way, shape, or form have to worry less about the infrastructure and more about like, well, how do I just while I'm not only coding the software, but I want to write a quick pipeline to test out this. How would I do that? I can have that embedded in my code. And I think that's the evolution of where we've gotten to from where we started.
100%. Yeah. And, we've been, as you were saying, like you've been in the space for 20 years, right? And there have been some really interesting changes or paradigm shifts. We went from servers to VMs to containers. We went from databases that are traditional to NoSQL to now distributed SQL that we, lead in the industry with CockroachDB. And then we also have this complete transformation of AI that was in 2013 to like where we are right now. We have like a magic tool right now available, right? And so if we will not talk about AI in this context because it kind of overshadows everything. What, according to you, really was like the most significant change? Obviously, let's talk about the cloud as well. Like, which one, in your opinion, was the most impactful transformation in the like last 10, 15 years that you feel was like really significant for the space?
Just in cloud in general, or CI/CD, or
I would say cloud, CI/CD, Kubernetes, like, and all of this,
yeah,
which you feel, yeah,
I would say like something that blew my mind, and I got to see this first at in AWS was using Lambda and serverless, of like here like I don't have to worry about not only just the infrastructure, but I don't need to like set up my machine to have libraries, or it's like I pick the version of the code that I want, the language, and all I have to worry about is the code and write libraries and write code there, and then have that seamlessly integrated with a DynamoDB on the back end or an application gateway on the front end. And I got to experience that working with a customer at AWS. I was like, wow, this is just like, it just simplifies everything. And that was like when I was like, wow, this is just like it's like a light bulb moment. I think obviously, not talk too much about AI, but I think, right, that's our next, like our killer app or our next like amazing feed. It's almost like when the internet came, and then, VMs and virtualization came, like I feel like those two things combined, of where we put less of the burden of any of that infrastructure on our developers or people maintaining it, and it's really kind of offloaded to a cloud provider. That's really kind of we've really moved very far ahead.
agree. No, I agree with you. I think, and this is a great segue to where I wanted to go with, is like talk about like just in context about our love for GitHub Copilot, right? And 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 GitHub essentially, as you can say, is like a target audience, target users is like developers and the software development lifecycle. And code is completely the center of attention right now. Like pretty much every model out there, from Sonnet to OpenAI, mini model, they're all just really focused on improving how we code. And I think the implementation of Copilot also kind of changed the game in how I interact with the code and how I communicate. So tell me a little bit about that and what you are working with your customer on.
With Copilot in particular. So yeah, so I would say, right, this idea of really instead of worrying so much about the details of the code, how do you prompt Copilot, maybe in Copilot chat, to get the responses that you want? Really kind of, it's like, I call it like it's prompting becomes an art of how you're going to talk to the AI to get a more complex, robust answer output back. I would say the other part of that I've noticed when I'm coding in the IDE in the editor is the comment driven development, where I'm writing a several bunch of comments and I'm kind of narrowing down of exactly what I want to get out of that piece of code. And then Copilot's spitting that code out so I can review it, accept it. Maybe I want to ask another question of it. But I think as GitHub, we've done a really good job of integrating that in the IDE. It's integrated in GitHub.com, and it becomes that tool that's alongside of you. I mean, it really is a Copilot, a peer programmer that's not a human being, that's there to help you out and kind of drive you to your end result much faster than if you were coding something on your own. I would say the other big part of it that I've noticed with customers, you'll have customers that are maybe proficient in one language, but Copilot, and they need to then translate that into another. And instead of having to go out and now I have to hire a whole bunch of developers or find developers that know that language, they can have Copilot guide them through, like, oh, this is what it would look like in Node.js. This is what the translation would be. It's saving time, money, like all of those things, but it's also growing the skill set of your own development community within your company. And I think that's just fascinating to me.
No, I agree. I think that's the cool part. Like when I first tested Copilot and I was writing a really, really basic function. So I wrote it first in JavaScript and I was like, okay, let me see if this can be converted into like Ruby, which I just completely don't understand. Right. And then it just converted the entire code. And I was like, this is phenomenal that I can do it through the IDE. And it's fascinating. And not just the fact that GitHub is like becoming my solution to like code, the way it can now be integrated, say, with Netlify or with like Vercel. That is also more very powerful for me now because I can completely do an entire, say, CD through these solutions, and it's completely automated for me. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. The Copilot's it's like extensibility now. We have Copilot extensions, so now like you have these third party tools like Docker or Sentry that are first class citizens within the IDE that you can ask it questions of Docker, or you can write your own extension. So maybe for you as a company, you have a DSL or a language that you want your folks to learn from and they can ask it questions directly. You can build that in and have the ability without having relying on GitHub to do that for you. You can do it and then integrate it. I actually just had a session on some of the things that were coming down on that. And it's just fascinating to me, as well as playing with some of the models that are available, the different LLMs that are available. We have the ability in our marketplace where you can play with them, you can install them and mess around with them. So we're not just kind of like, it's a full core press GitHub Copilot. It's like, oh, where else can we take this even outside of that to help our development community?
Right. And one of the questions I had was like, one of my struggles though, when I'm coding with an AI is, and I think everybody's trying to solve it and some people hacked it, was like, I would ask it to code something and then it would code something that was like 80% what I wanted. And then I'm being lazy. Instead of putting that into an ID and making the change myself, I'm asking it to make the change through a prompt, which is like a language, like my English or something. And then it rewrites that entire code. And I was like, well, what if it could just cache all of this and just make change to that part that I'm asking it to? And, and that, yeah. So is Copilot also like doing some kind of a mechanism where it's caching some of these prompt and like prompt requirements and then not hitting the entire code?
Yeah, it does cache some of that prompting, but it gets garbage collected over time. But it does cache some of that. And I would say some of the thing that you're talking about there is we have the ability where, let's say you have the code, you took one piece of that code, and then you asked it a follow-up question. And we have the ability now to look at what's already in your ID in the editor and then actually just make those subtle changes and then accept it, and then you're done. So we do have that in latest and greatest. We have that ability now to do that. Obviously, like I would say the other thing that's really what GitHub does in its philosophy is like it's very much a ship to learn. So we ship features that may be in an alpha, beta, or so customers can get their hands on it and give us that feedback, and we get like a really good feedback loop on well, this is valuable, this is not valuable, or we would hit a lot of our development community if we added this feature. And I'm always amazed of how we kind of really, we just iterate so much that we get a lot of that quick feedback loop to make improvements in the product.
Right. I mean, that's awesome. No, I'm going to go. I've been using Copilot for about a week, and I have to like try some other things on it, because part of what I was doing was like testing. I do not know how much you know about Cursor AI. Do you know about Cursor AI?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yes. I haven't used it per se, but I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's also pretty fascinating, because one of the things I like about Cursor is that like you have the code, obviously, like code comes out, and then you can select a bunch of code and then bring a prompt right above it and just type on top of it, and then it'll expand just that section. It's also fascinating. Might be a good idea to add as a feature in Copilot.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to go back to our engineers and give them that tidbit of. I'm sure, like in a lot of, obviously, because I deal with customers and a lot of our field stuff, I get a lot of those competitive kind of reports, and we do have stuff on Cursor that I've read through. So I'm sure our Copilot engineers, our GitHub engineers, are actively like, okay, let's add this into us and into what we have for GitHub Copilot. And I'm sure something like that will be there before you know it. And I'm sure with GitHub Universe coming up October 29th and 30th, I'm sure we're going to have a whole bunch of new announcements there that our customers and our community are going to love.
Very good. Are you going to be there at Universe?
Yeah, where I'm doing a session with my peer Brian Sun. We're doing one on let's build an app with GitHub Copilot in 40 minutes. So we're doing a sandbox session there. So we're looking forward to that. And yeah, it's going to be a great. I went last year, and luckily I submitted a proposal that got accepted for this year. And I'm really looking forward to all the announcements and what we're going to be doing.
That's awesome. So everybody listening in, if you're going to Universe, make sure you meet Ari. He's going to be presenting during Universe, but just go follow him. He's like, I love your energy, Ari. This is brilliant. So on that thread, I just had a question, just a follow-up is like, can we bring, I did not test this so far because I was using the existing model. Can you bring your custom large language model locally and connect that to GitHub Copilot?
Yeah, so one of the big announcements, and we've kind of, I think, done a preview of it, is you can develop custom models or fine-tune models. So this way, if you're writing in your company your own DSL, your own language that's specific, you can train the LLM on that to then use that with Copilot. So I haven't played with that a lot. I know it's out there, but I'm sure at Universe they're going to show some amazing like demo that's it's going to do everything. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I was blown away last year when we announced Workspaces was like, from a project manager standpoint was amazing, because you can open this workspace and say, here's the problem I have. Here's how can we break this down to epics or stories to develop this application. And it will go off and do that for you all and create GitHub issues. And, so those are some of the things that, we did last year. So I can't imagine what we're going to show this year.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be amazing.
I still feel like we're just so, like, it's like we're still scratching the surface with AI, like, I won't be surprised, that the amount of usage on GitHub increases, because coding is becoming like a commodity now. It's something anybody can do. Like the language to code is no longer Python or programming languages, but just basic English. And anybody who has experienced the app on a phone knows, okay, what they want, and they can just communicate that. And so I think that would add to the scale at which GitHub will have to kind of adopt to these users trying to use the platform. I know we were going to talk about your cloud experience and DevOps and everything, but we went a completely different direction.
Yeah.
So let's.
I'm so passionate about GitHub Copilot. I could talk, like I said, I could talk for hours about it. So
no, me too. I mean, I am an AI kind of person who loves to talk about AI myself. So it's awesome. I mean, let's take a pivot, and I just wanted to get your perspective on. You've been in the space for a while. Like some of the really interesting things that you have seen in the cloud space. For example, like what are some of the mistakes that people do when they're starting on the cloud, like trying to modernize and move their CI/CD and their applications to the cloud?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say a lack of sometimes, you'll have a C-level executive or someone at a high level that's like, we have to go to the cloud, right? It's a mandate. We have to go. But what does that really mean? Like, I think you need to really sometimes it's a lack of like a clear strategy or planning, maybe an inadequate cost assessment of capital budget to OpEx. Like these are certain points that you need to really think about before diving into that space. Maybe it's security and compliance challenges that if we move this into the cloud, is there going to be a compliance issue? Legacy applications that can't move yet, or maybe it's going to take, I always look at the moving to the cloud, it's a journey, right? And there's short-term goals and there's long-term goals. And you really have to do a thorough assessment. You have to, make sure that you're taking into account, that you also want, when you're even deploying a cloud solution, you're pushing your workloads into the cloud, is that you want continuous improvements and feedback loops. So if something's not working or something's not a good fit, it's okay to leave it on-prem until there is a good solution there, and not to force that. And I would say too, cloud native like design principles, like taking that into account of like, can we containerize this workload? Do we just need a Kubernetes cluster so we can orchestrate those containers and have our platform run through that? Is serverless an option for us? So I think a lot of folks, like, they don't plan ahead or scope and assess thoroughly enough. I think it's so important to do that, and then also revisit those plans as you go, of maybe some adjustments need to be made as you go along. I think that's what gets missed some of the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think many times people have this insane idea in their mind that, oh, I can just move to the cloud and I'm going to be fine, and it'll take just 2 weeks. But that's not really the case, right? Because you have to look at where you are, where you want to be, and you have to understand what that translation looks like. And also in today's day and age, like, scale and high availability is pretty much critical, right? And so pretty much everything that, as you said, right, you kind of miss out on those things, and adopting to those become really important, right? So one of the other things I was really curious to kind of know and learn about was, like, with all these changes that have been happening in the space, right? How do you personally keeping up with the times, because there is so much information out there.
Yeah. I think it comes up with, reading, what new things are coming out, listening to podcasts such as yours, blogs, reading as much as I can. I kind of subscribe to certain like types of articles. So I'll have it pop up on my feed, and I may not read the whole thing, but I want to get an overview of maybe some new technology that's coming out. And that's what really helps me keep on top of it. I'm also really fortunate enough to work with peers that they themselves are on top of stuff. So they'll share that with the rest of us, and really give us some like high level, TDLR on what it is. And then we can dive deeper if we want. I think that's what allows me in this fast paced, cloud world, of how to adapt and keep moving or look to the future. And it may be something that's not here now, but it's coming down the road in 6 months to a year or to 2 years. And I think that's what allows me to do that. I'm always listening to some type of podcast or reading a blog or an article, and that really, keeps me on top of what's going on and latest and greatest.
That's awesome. So, as we come to the close, I want to be cognizant of the time, but I'm really curious, like, what's your advice to young people? I know you've kids who go play lacrosse. You gave advice to them, obviously, but what's your advice to folks who are trying to get on a journey, a similar path as to yours, as to what should they go and refer to, learn, that they can kind of follow the path of a cloud architect such as yours?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the Microsoft has the MS Learn, and a lot of it is free. Is you can really dive into not just reading about something, but really using a code space or a repository and dive into that to play around with it. And I think that's how you learn. At least for me, that's how I learn the best. Is really hands on. Of, okay, let me dive into this and do like a sample workshop on how this works, or a hackathon. I would say that goes way more miles than just reading or watching a video, is really getting your hands dirty and getting deep into it. So that's my big advice. I know that's what has helped me over the years, kind of stay on top of things. the many years. But that's what I would suggest and advise folks getting into the field.
Very good. So, how do you prevent people like me from getting lazy and staying up to date with code? Because I'm just going to use an AI, right?
Well, I mean, it does. I use we have something we use internally called Rewatch, or even our Zoom meetings that we have. The summaries that come out of that, or the AI generated stuff that comes out of those meetings, it's great. It saves me so much time that I don't have to listen through a whole video, or even so. I guess it's not even just AI, but the idea that it kind of summarized different sections of the video. It knows like topics were switched, so if you just want to go to that one section, you can do that. So in this world, right? I think we all have limited time of what we can spend on different things. Like I have kids, I have a life outside of this. So how do I balance it all? And I try to lean on AI as much as possible so I can be as productive and as efficient as I can be.
For sure. No, no, I agree. Well, this is awesome. Ari, I mean, it's been such a fascinating conversation. I mean, I absolutely loved having you on the episode today. For everyone listening in, go follow Ari. Ari, what's the best place to follow you and track what you are working on?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously GitHub as well. Just look up my name, Ari LiVigni. It's ARI LiVigni. You can find me, on YouTube as well. Like I have presence pretty much almost everywhere. But on LinkedIn too, I do post a lot of things about some of the innovations we're doing at GitHub, or GitHub Universe. But yeah, you can find me in any of those places.
Awesome. And go to GitHub Universe. Ari is going to be presenting there. Learn how to do Copilot in 40 minutes and build an app. And hopefully, build a $1 billion startup out of it.
Yeah. We're our app that we're going to do, and we're gonna make it kind of fun. Is we're calling it the OctoFit app. So we're going to create an app that's for exercise and keeping track of working out. We're going to make it fun for folks in the audience.
Well, that's awesome. So I hope this is like a fantastic demo for you. Is it like a full session or a demo? We're going to walk through everything for everyone.
So we're going to do like a brief intro. We're going to do a demo, and then it's actually going to be a workshop. So there's going to be people hands-on on keyboard, working through the solution. We are time boxed to that 40 minutes. So the idea is like we're going to show them so much to get them started, and they can. It's almost they can take that homework home and play around with it more in their own environments if they so choose.
Amazing. And all they need is a GitHub Copilot IDE to get started with this.
Yeah, all they need is a GitHub account, and an IDE, and then and that's all. And on premise, we'll have this machines provided for them with the Copilot license, as well as a test account there. But in their own use, they can use GitHub Copilot free individual version for now. A lot of those features that we used to have at the enterprise level are now offered for free in business. So it doesn't mean you need to be in the whole GitHub ecosystem. You can use it within your own IDE and take benefits of using Copilot and Copilot Chat right there in your IDE that you're used to using every day.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, if you're a customer of Ari, or if you're somebody interested in using Copilot, wants to learn, hit Ari up on LinkedIn, as well as go check out the Universe workshop presentation that they'll be doing. It's been an absolute blast talking to you, Ari. I know we had a completely different plan, but we went totally in a different direction. But I absolutely loved it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, same here. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.